What is up, guys? Randomonium here. So this video is the second part of my stream on team compositions. The first part of the stream covered just the basics on team compositions, the 5 different types of team compositions, and a lot of just general information. This video is going to cover the matchups in specifics. So we're going to go over every single matchup that you can have on team compositions. We're going to go over how you can win when you have the team composition advantage, and also how you can win if you have a team composition disadvantage. So you always want to try a draft to make sure that you have the advantage with the team composition, but this video will help you if you mess up or if something goes wrong and you wind up not having the team composition advantage. This video will help you win those type of games. Additionally, there will be a third video that's going to cover how to create team compositions and draft plans for Clash specifically. So definitely check out that video. It's going to be a great video. But without further ado, let's get into the video. Okay, so let's get into the actual matchups and we'll talk about it. So attack versus catch composition. So this is the most common matchup you're going to see that's not mirror. So attack versus attack is most common, but catch versus attack is second most common. So catch compositions have the advantage in this matchup. And the main reason for that is that attack compositions, they need to fight 5v5. If they don't have all 5, they tend to fall apart a little bit. And catch compositions are really good at picking one person to turn it into a 5v4, basically. And catch is also typically stronger in the early game. So they can usually get that early game advantage. And then that makes it harder for attack compositions to really contest those objectives in those crucial mid-game team fights. So usually attack has to give up a few more objectives than they would like against a catch composition, and they have to play a little bit more for late game. But if you want to win as an attack composition, you need to stick together. Catch compositions are all about picking you off. You have to play safe early because your catch composition will have an advantage on you. You need to look for those mid-game team fights if you're on equal gold. If you fall behind too much early, you might need to give up some of those objectives in the mid-game and play more for trading objectives and more for the late game. And typically you want to try to bait a 5v5 team fight with Drake and Baron. So you want to get to those objectives early. You want to set up your vision control. And the big problem with catch compositions is they feel like they're stronger than they actually are. And then you get into a 5v5 team fight, and they can actually lose those 5v5 team fights. As far as catch compositions are concerned, you want to be forcing those skirmishes early. Early game is important. You want to avoid those 5v5 team fights. You want to be the one who's establishing the vision control and sweeping out their vision. You want to be pressuring the side lanes and looking for picks when they're split. So when the attack composition is 5, they're incredibly strong. But if you're pressuring multiple lanes, they're going to have to split up, and that's when you can kind of pick them off in those 2v2s, 1v1s, 3v3 skirmishes type of stuff. And you want to bait out their ultimates. So one of the main disadvantages of attack compositions is they're very ultimate reliant. So if you can get multiple ultimates baited out and they only hit like one champion, that's a huge win for catch compositions, and you want to fight while those ultimates are still on cooldown. So yeah, the most common way that catch compositions will lose this matchup is they will try to do a straight up 5v5 team fight. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen this happen. It's insane. Like all the time I see catch compositions, they have an advantage, they think they're on their way to a victory, and then they throw the entire game trying to 5v5 an attack composition. And it's like, that's not your win condition. And I see this even at the professional level. So if you're a catch composition, do not 5v5 team fight. You want to look for those skirmishes, or you want to look for those picks before the objective. The biggest way that I see attack compositions lose this matchup is that they waste all of their ultimates on a single person. Like you're not a catch composition. You play to your win condition. Like you don't want to use your ultimates to catch a single person. You want to use your ultimates to win a big team fight. So I think you're going to see a common theme here is that you have to play to your win conditions. Catch compositions, you're looking for catches. Attack composition, you're looking for those 5v5 team fights where you hit big ultimates on multiple people. Okay, so on to attack versus protect. So protect has the advantage. And the reason why they have the advantage is protect actually has better team fighting than attack. No, it's shocking, but protect has better team fighting than attack. And the reason for this is based off of what classes typically go into a protect composition. So remember, we've got all the attributes. We've got damage, we have toughness, we've got crowd control, we've got mobility, we've got utility, and we've got range. Attack compositions have to put a lot of their attribute points, for lack of a better term, into mobility. They need that engage potential. Protect compositions don't need to put that many points into mobility, which means they have more points for damage, for toughness, for utility, for those other attributes, which make them stronger in 5v5 team fights. So, attack compositions are usually stronger in the early game. Protect comps usually have a little bit more scaling. So, attack compositions, they want to fight early. You want to fight before those hyper carries come online. You want to avoid 5v5s in the late game at all costs. You will get wiped, usually, unless you have a massive gold advantage. If you can, you want to split the protect comp into multiple groups. Yes, attack compositions want to stay together as 5, but not against a protect comp. Protect comps are even more reliant on staying grouped as 5 than an attack composition is. So you want to try to pressure lanes prior to the objective. So you try to push top lane before the Drake spawns, and then force them to have to send somebody to respond to the pressure in top lane, which allows you to get priority on the Drake and force the protect composition to potentially check into you in a 5v4. If you're the protect composition, you want to play safe early, right? There's no rush with a protect composition. You just farm, scale, don't worry about it. You want to team fight late. That's a big thing. You want to team fight late. That's when you're strongest, when you hit those big item power spikes on your carries. That's when you're looking to team fight. You want to stay grouped. If they split you up, that's when you're going to lose a lot of your power if you're split up. So the way that you can kind of force them to you is you threaten Drake and Baron. If you're on Drake or Baron first and they have to check into you, you're in a really strong position of power, because they basically have to engage onto you, which is when you're strongest, essentially. All right, let's go on to attack versus siege compositions. So in this matchup, attack compositions have the advantage. They definitely have the advantage in this one. Attack has enough engage potential that siege cannot stall or disengage from. The engage from attack compositions is just way too strong. But siege will typically have an advantage in the early game. Before the defenses come online, siege usually has that advantage, and they want to be looking to try and snowball that advantage in the early game. So if you're the attack composition, you got to be decisive. Like, being indecisive is a death sentence against a siege composition. You want to utilize your flanks, right? Siege compositions are great when people are only coming from one angle. If you can come from multiple angles and all engage onto them at the same time, they typically can't disengage from multiple flanks. You always want to be targeting the carries, right? Target those big damage dealers, those squishy carries. And you definitely want to be looking towards getting sustained items. So siege compositions, they're going to try and poke you down. So the more sustain you can have, the more likely you're going to be able to sustain through that poke damage. If you're the siege composition, you got to get the advantage early. You really have to be focusing on trying to get as many plates as you can get, as many towers as you can get. And you really want to try and keep the attack composition on the back foot. So you take one tower, you rotate, you take another tower, you rotate, you take another tower, you grab Rift Herald, you grab Drake. You really just want to always keep attack composition on the back foot, always keep them on their side of the map. You can't get cocky if you're a siege composition. You may feel like you're in control of the map, you may feel like you're in control of the game. Don't get cocky, because those engage compositions, the attack composition, if they come in and they hit those big ultimates, you're going to get wiped almost instantaneously. You have to ward your flanks. You have to be very careful from multiple engage points. And you need to stall those fights as long as possible. You really need to be able to try and poke them down. In a straight up 5v5 team fight, you're going to lose. You got to get those carries around half health if you're going to have a chance. Disengage is super important. So anybody who's got disengage in their kits, any of your utility, your supports, your jungles, your top lanes, whoever's got utility in their kit, you got to be on point with that disengage potential. Otherwise, they're going to get on top of you and they're going to wind up smashing you. So the most common way that I see attack compositions lose is that they're too indecisive. Like, that's the main reason you're going to lose if you're playing an attack composition to a siege composition. You basically got to, as soon as you see them, you evaluate, hey, is this a good fight? If it's a good fight, you pull the trigger, you engage, you fight, you win, you take the objective. Most common way that I see the siege lose is that they try to fight a straight up team fight. You're not going to beat an attack composition in a straight up team fight. You have to poke them. You have to stall things out. It may seem boring, but you have to stall them 30 seconds, maybe even a minute, before you actually take those fights. You need to get those carries into those like mid health, preferably even lower health values before you start the fights. All right. So now we're going to move on to attack versus split. So attack does have the advantage in this matchup. So attack compositions can engage. They can even tower dive the split composition team. And they can kill the main group of the split composition, either the 3 or the 4. And they'll be able to take towers faster than the split pusher can answer. So that's why they've got the advantage. So it's relatively even usually as far as like who's got the advantage early game. It really depends on who you draft, what type of split pushers you draft, what type of attack composition champions you draft. But you pretty much always want to camp the split pusher. If you're attack composition to a split composition, you want to camp the split pusher early. You want to deny vision. That pretty much makes it so it's much harder for the main group to step up or for the split pusher to push. You want to force fights at neutral objectives. So ideally, you would like the split composition to group up. If the split composition groups up, you auto win pretty much. So anytime you can try and force the split composition to group, you're winning. And if they don't group, you dive them, basically. You set it up. I know dives can be scary sometimes, but you make sure your tank takes the aggro and you dive them before the split pusher can basically split you to death. If you're the split composition, you got to funnel resources into your split pusher. You got to camp them a lot. You got to get them really far ahead. If you're the split pusher, you need to be invading the jungle. You need to be stealing jungle camps. You need to get big. You have to get huge if you're a split pusher. You have to track the enemy team, especially the main group, because that's where the attack composition is going to want to go. They're going to want to engage on that group of 3 or that group of 4. So vision control is key. And if the attack composition tries to force you to contest an objective, like a Drake, you want to look for steals. You don't want to look for fights, right? Let your split pusher continue split pushing. Send your jungler on a suicide mission to look for the steal. 50-50 it, if possible. But don't risk anybody else. You got to keep your wave clear alive, right? You want to keep your wave clear alive so that way if they push after they take the objective, you can at least stall them out and give your split pusher more time in order to take those objectives. Okay, so let's go on to catch versus protect. So, in this matchup, protect has the advantage. So catch often has to spend way too many resources to pick a meaningful target in a protect composition. There's way too much utility and disengage and all that stuff in a protect composition for the catch composition to handle. And that's why protect usually has the advantage. They can usually keep their carries alive, even if catch tries to pick them. But catch has a massive advantage in the early game. Like, huge advantage in the early game. So if you're the catch composition, the way you win this matchup is you want to force fights as often as you can, as early as you can. Try to take Drakes as early as possible. Force them into those fights that they can't win because their scaling hasn't come online yet. Skirmishes are huge for you guys. 2v2 skirmishes, 3v3 skirmishes. You will win those if you're the catch composition. Vision control is huge, especially deep vision. You want to be able to track them. You want to deny their vision as well. You got to set up death brushes, things like that. Force them to face check into you. And typically, the way that you're going to catch them, especially when it starts getting into the later portions of the game, is you're going to catch them rotating between objectives, right? You pressure mid, you rotate top, you catch them while they're rotating top to try and stop your push in the top lane, things like that. That's the type of advantages you need to get with that catch composition. You never want to just, bash heads against a protect composition. They will beat you. You want to try and look for those sneaky picks from Fog of War while they're transitioning between objectives. If you're the protect composition, stay grouped, right? The night is dark and full of terrors, pretty much, when you're playing against a catch composition. Any brush could be a death brush, so you got to be really careful. Only your tanks should be face checking, right? Get sweepers, send your tanks out to try and clear that vision. Make sure the carriers are staying far enough back that even if there was the catch composition in that bush, they can't instantly engage onto the carry and just completely bypass the tank. So you definitely have to stay back if you're the carry. If you're the protect comp, ARAM, just march it down mid. I'm dead serious. Force them to try and match you 5v5. Anytime you're doing a 5v5 team fight against a catch composition, you're at an advantage, unless they're way far ahead from the early game. You do have to think about what's the gold advantage if you're trying to march it down mid too early. You also want to be first to objectives, right? Nobody wants to be face checking into a catch comp. So if you're going to want to try and contest a Drake or to contest a Baron, things like that, you've got to be first to that objective, which is usually actually pretty hard for a protect composition because they can't split up against the catch composition. So this is probably the hardest part about playing a protect composition to an attack composition, is you want to make sure your lanes are under control, but you also want to be first to those objectives. And like I've already said, you got to be extremely cautious when you're split, right? Every brush, you have to treat it as a death brush. You have to be super careful. You have to take super safe pathing. Make sure you're not backing anywhere where they might have wards, or not backing in areas where you don't have a lot of vision control. You just basically have to play really cautiously if you're a protect composition. The most common way I see protect compositions losing is they get caught rotating between lanes or on their way to an objective. So like I've already said, you're pushing mid, enemy team rotates towards top, you try to match them going top, you get caught because you don't take safe pathing. So that type of stuff happens all the time with protect composition. Most common way I see catch lose is that they don't focus the same target, or they blow too many abilities on a tankier champion, right? You got to have your comms on point if you're playing a catch composition to protect composition. You need to make sure that you know exactly who you're going to focus. And it's not always the carry, right? If there's a Soraka on the enemy team, maybe you focus the Soraka, right? Every situation's different, so talk about it. Talk about it with your team. Make sure that you've got the right carry in mind, the right enemy champion in mind, that you know you can blow them up before the fight starts. So we're getting on to catch versus siege. So in this matchup, siege has the advantage. So the reason for this is that siege usually has enough disengage to prevent the catch engage, and catch is usually squishy and unable to deal with a lot of poke damage, right? So typically with catch compositions, you're drafting squishier champions that have high burst damage. In siege compositions, they can typically will outrange you significantly, and they can hit you and delete, a third or half of your health bar with their long range poke. So if you're the catch composition, you definitely want to be looking for vision control and vision denial. If a siege composition has full vision control and they can make full use of their long range, it's painful. They're going to hit you from angles you weren't expecting, and if you take a few shots, then you're basically going to have to recall. If you're the catch composition, realize that you have the advantage when the enemy teams are split up. So you want to be pressuring multiple objectives. Siege compositions are similar to protect in that they want to stay grouped when possible. There are a few champions that can split off in siege compositions, but in general, splitting a siege composition is usually better than letting them group. You have to be extremely decisive with siege compositions. You don't have the health bars usually to just sit there and take the poke. So as soon as you see them on the map, you pretty much have to make that call of, hey, I'm either going to stay way far away from them, 1,000 units away from them, or I'm going to engage. There's no in between. If you get caught in that no man's zone, you're going to get screwed if you're the catch composition. And similar to the catch versus protect comp, you want to be looking for picks and rotations, right? You push lanes, you force them to rotate between lanes, you pick them when they're rotating between the lanes. You make sure that their range is negated by using vision denial. If you're the siege composition, you got to be slow, methodical, deliberate, right? They've got a lot of burst damage on the catch side. You got to be careful, right? If you're the siege composition, you should be stronger in 5v5 fights, just by a little bit, but it's close. So You do want to stay grouped if you're the siege composition. You should win those 5v5 team fights, but you could get outplayed. So you really do want to still stall and poke as much as possible. Base checking is death, pretty much. If you're going up against a catch composition, you have to really be careful to avoid face checking if you're the siege composition. And you always want to be threatening the most valuable objective possible, right? You will be stronger grouped as 5. You want to try and make the catch composition group as 5 as well. If the catch composition is able to just contest multiple objectives and run all over the map, then you're losing. If you're able to force them to group, then you're winning if you're the siege composition. So the most common way that I see siege lose in this matchup is that they rush things, right? You got to be slow. You got to be patient with these siege compositions. It's essential. You can't rush anything. And if you are the catch composition, the biggest way that I see catch lose is they are not controlling vision, or they're too hesitant, right? They're too scared of that poke, right? You either have to be all the way out or all the way in. Do not get caught in that no man's zone if you're the catch composition. Okay, catch versus split. So catch has the advantage in this team composition. In general, catch is going to have the advantage in the early game, and catch can dogpile on split pushers really effectively. And they can make the rest of the team too scared to push up to be able to trade objectives. So typically how catch versus split works is, they threaten the main group. They threaten. Main group is too afraid to push up a little bit. Split pusher over pushes a little bit too much. They collapse on the split pusher and kill him. And then they've got map control. Once the split pusher is dead, they've got map control. So if you're the catch composition, you gotta shut down the split pusher. It's common thread. If you're against a split push composition, shut down the split pusher. If necessary, use summoner spells to get kills. It's okay to burn a flash to shut down the split pusher. You want to bait their team into following, right? So you might they might try to go save their split pusher, and then you just collapse on them instead, and you kill them in rotation. So you definitely want to play with them a little bit, especially with the vision denial. And, if the split pusher is overextending and it looks like they're rotating to help the split pusher, just catch them instead in the rotation. If you're the split composition, your split pusher needs to be able to 1v2. Like, straight up, they've got to be so big that they can 1v2. Yeah, it's a hard task, but that's what you got to be able to do. You got to camp your split pusher, get them to a point where they can 1v2 enemy champions. Another trick you can do is you can hide allies near the split pusher, right? If you notice that they keep going after the split pusher, hide someone near the split pusher. And then when they try to engage on the split pusher, like 2v1, you're right there and it's a 2v2 or something like that. And then the other thing is that you have to pressure objectives if they look for a pick. So anytime they look like they're going to engage for something, you've got to try and trade for an objective on the other side of the map, whether it be a Drake or a tower or something else. You always have to be trading objectives with split, or you'll just continuously fall behind against the catch composition. All right, almost through it. So we're protect composition versus siege compositions. So in this one, siege has the advantage. So the reason for this is that protect does not have the engage to start fights against siege. So siege can just constantly just pepper them from long range, and protect just doesn't have that engage potential like an attack composition has in order to start those fights against a siege composition. And also in general, siege has the early game advantage against protect, which makes it even harder for protect to contest. So if you're the protect composition, you have to start fights. You have to do it, like, by any means necessary. You have to start fights. You cannot let them just poke you. You have to play around your power spikes, right? Especially, like, you have to be like checking the scoreboard and seeing when they complete items and when your carries complete items. You want to fight around those item power spikes. You have to be decisive, right? You cannot just sit there and just take that poke damage from the siege composition. If necessary, use summoner spells, right? Flash engages. Do whatever it takes to start that fight and prevent them from keep poking you down. And vision denial is key. If the siege composition sees where you are, they can use that really long range to basically just poke you and prevent you from even contesting those objectives. If you're the siege composition, you have to avoid team fights. That's like number one. Do not team fight a protect composition. You just stay away from them. Focus on the poke, right? Especially the carries. Anytime you can get poke damage onto carries, go for it. You have to be patient. That's incredibly essential, is that just because they seem like they're weaker than you, do not rush things. And then obviously your skill shot accuracy, it's essential. You have to be on point with those skill shots. You have to get that meaningful chip damage onto those carries to make it so that they're scared to step up, basically. They don't want to fight you because they're worried about just getting bursted out, essentially. So the most common way that I see Siege losing this matchup is they don't respect the flash engage. And I see this even at the professional level. You have to respect the flash engage. So anytime you're making those calculations of whether or not you're safe, always assume they have flash up unless you're like religiously tracking the flashes, because that's how they win. That's how they're going to beat you, is they're going to go for that flash engage to get that team fight. The most common way that I see protect losing is they don't pick their fights wisely. Like, you're only going to get a few chances against a siege composition. Like I was saying, you have to use those flashes wisely in order to get those key team fights, to get those victories, in order to be able to take objectives on the map. So you have to really be careful on which fights you pick. Use your summoner spells wisely to start those fights, and then you have to take objectives after winning those fights. That's absolutely essential. Okay, second to last one, protect versus split compositions. So split has the advantage in this matchup. So the reason for that is that split, or rather protect, doesn't have the engage potential to really threaten split. So pretty much split gets to push multiple objectives for free. The main group is not afraid of getting engaged upon because protect doesn't have that much engage. And the split pusher is not that worried because nobody's going to engage on the split pusher either. So if you're the protect composition, you want to be baiting fights as much as possible around objectives. So anytime you can get a split composition to group, you're winning against that composition. You need wave clear. You need pushing power. So you need to be drafting a lot of wave clear if you're the protect composition. You need to be itemizing towards wave clear items. So look for items that allow you to get more wave clear, like Static Shiv or Luden's Echo, things like that. You need to stall out the split pusher. Don't fight the split pusher. Just stall them out. You need to send somebody that the split pusher can't dive under tower, right? That has relatively safe wave clear. And you just want to stall the split pusher out. Just stop them at the tower, prevent them from taking the tower. And the big thing with protect compositions is Baron can win or lose you the game, right? If the split composition gets Baron, they will feel near unstoppable against you. Like, you will feel like there's nothing you can do. But if you get Baron, that will effectively nullify the split push because your minions will be so much stronger in those side lanes that it'll make it very hard for the split pusher to take objectives. So Baron is huge in this matchup. So yeah, you definitely want to try and secure Baron if it's available. You have to always watch for the steal, obviously. But yeah, you can definitely threaten Baron and then try to look for the 5v5 team fight if they try to contest you. If you're the split composition, it's pretty much all on the split pusher's shoulders. Like, you have to be on point if you're the split pusher in this matchup. You need to have wave clear when in mid lane. So rotate your mid laner, your AD carry, whoever has the wave clear. Rotate them to mid lane. Prevent the protect composition from just marching down mid and taking towers. Never team fight. Like, just don't do it. If you're going to try and contest an objective, you're looking for a steal, not for a fight. You definitely have to track the enemy's movements. They're going to be looking for those flash engages. Do not give them those flash engages. Do not give them any way for them to actually get on top of you. You know, the longer you give your split pusher to work, the better your chances are to win the game. So, the most common way I see split losing this matchup is they group too much, right? Don't group if you're a split composition, especially against a protect composition. Protect compositions love it when people group against them. And the most common way I see protect losing is not getting their lane assignments right? So you send somebody to just try and stall out the split pusher, and that person dies to the split pusher. Now you're screwed in those type of situations. So you have to make sure your lane assignments are on point. You're sending the right person to match the split pusher and just hold them, just stall them out. That's all you need to do against the split pusher. All right, the final matchup, Siege versus Split. So in this one, Split has the advantage. So the reason for this is that Siege basically has no way to punish the split pusher or the main group. It's really more the split pusher. They have no way to punish the split pusher, but it's hard for them to punish the main group as well. So if you're the Siege composition, your early game is essential. Like, you cannot fall behind. You cannot fall behind in this matchup. You have to keep them on the back foot. You need to be pushing. You need to take a lot of plates. You need to get the tower advantage. You need to get Rift Herald. You need to keep them on their side of the map. If they're on your side of the map, you are in big trouble. So you need to keep that tempo up. You need to keep pushing them, keeping them on their side of the map. If you're the split composition, you have to funnel resources into that split pusher. I know it's a common thread in every matchup, but I'm going to say it again. Get resources onto that split pusher, no matter what. You want to itemize for wave clear and sustain if you're part of the main group, right? Siege compositions are going to have tons of wave clear. You need to be able to match that wave clear, prevent them from taking those tower plates, prevent them from taking those easy towers. If you're the split composition and you're even, if you're even on towers, things like that, you are winning. Like, you will grind them out because they will not be able to contest you in multiple lanes, especially once your split pusher gets towards full build. So, the most common way I see Split losing is being too aggressive with the main group, right? You have to respect the poke damage. You have to respect the potential team fighting of the Siege composition. Do not get too aggressive. Give your split pusher time to work. If you are the Siege composition, the most common way that you're going to lose as a Siege composition is you don't control the center of the map. You don't control that line across the river, right? Keep them on their side of the map. As soon as they start pushing into your territory, you're in a whole world of trouble. Alright guys, that is the video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If there's any of the matchups for team compositions that you still don't fully understand and you want a little bit more insight into those matchups, leave a comment. I'll be happy to answer it. Once again, if anything didn't make sense, you may want to check out the first video I posted on team compositions. That goes over kind of the generalities of the team compositions, goes over the basics of team compositions. And then if you're looking for how to apply a lot of this knowledge to Clash or amateur leagues, that'll be in the next video I post. We'll be very particular and be very specific to how to create a team composition plan for Clash or amateur leagues. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you guys have a fantastic day. This is Randomonium signing off.